Darla, a couple weeks ago, had mentioned, so what is this about abstract art? And it was interesting that you brought that up, because that question was like the question of the week. I had more people ask about my feelings of abstract art and all that. And it wasn't, you weren't the first person to ask. There was actually other questions. And so I had them do, during that period of time, an actual abstract painting. And you know, my bar for abstract art is that it has to mean something or say something, because it's hard to make the brain not think of things. And one of my students got back from an abstract workshop that she did back east. And she brought all the paintings in, and I said, so what did you think? And she said, it was so much harder than I thought. And she said, and I said, why? And she says, because everything I did kind of felt like it represented something. And I said, well, how can it not? How can you tell the brain to be stupid? We exist here because of our brain making sense of things. You know, if you were out in the fields 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago and you saw things move, you had to figure out what that was. And if you didn't, you'd be dead. And so our brain makes sense of things. And so in that class, the teacher says, you can't make sense of things. And so she said it was really challenging. And I looked at the two paintings that she did in class, and I said, I love this one. I said, and she says, that's the one the teacher hated the most. And then she turned to the one that the teacher liked, and I said, oh, that's dreadfully awful. And she says, but he liked it because it didn't have any representation to it. Nothing in it made sense. And I go, yeah, that's why I don't like it, because you're telling me to be dumb. You know, it's one thing to organize lights and darks, but to actually think that the brain will go dead and accept what you want to put in front of it as being non-representational and stuff is unreasonable. So they all were working on the theory that I used last week in our talk about making an abstract of love. And some of them were really extraordinary. Love, the word love. You know, so like we all know what love means, but it's an abstract idea. You know, poetry, Shakespeare, everybody has tried to write about it, and we know what it is. Music's written about it. You know, everybody has a little different feeling about it, but yet we're kind of in agreement when I say I love you. I love you. You kind of know what that means.
Oh,
yeah.
So is that our next assignment?
No.
Oh, watch out! We don't want that exercise, please. Yeah, watch out with that guy. Yeah.
It can be.
Totally abstract.
It can be totally abstract.
Be careful.
It would be interested in this class. But anyway, so what I did was I kind of morphed it into a skyscape. So that was our idea, is to actually take a skyscape and make it into an abstract. Now, when you actually look at a sky for a while, you start seeing elk and deer and patterns. You know, if anything's non-representational, it's clouds. So there you have an abstract, but how long is it before you look at clouds that you're not making something out of them? Yeah. Just like when you sit at a restroom somewhere and they have that fake marble on the walls and you look at it for a while and start seeing faces and things happening. That's just our brain works that way, and to tell the brain not to do that. So what I was interested in this particular exercise is to create a skyscape. Now in my paintings it's important to have a center focal point, eye magnets, good lights and shadows, you know, all of the things that I'm looking for, transitions. And working with an abstract object like clouds, how do you work on that? Now, I also asked in the homework assignment that we have a little bit of land at the bottom. And that's just to give us a sense of place. Without a foreground, middle ground, background, I don't view a painting as being a painting. I view it as a study. So if you just do clouds without a foreground, middle ground, background, and it's just clouds, to me that's a study. It doesn't ever feel complete. If you put in the sense of a foreground in front of that, it does become more of a complete painting by having a foreground, middle ground, and background. It also gives an idea of the horizon line where we're looking, which is one of the keys to painting outdoors, is knowing where your horizon is, or just overall painting. So it gives a viewer a sense of where they're at participating in the painting and how to actually adjust their eyes to what they're seeing. I also wanted to see whether or not you could get some depth and how you arranged all of those shapes. Now, some artists took some time and they worked from photographs. Some artists made it up. So we'll just take a look at some of the things that they actually created. So my first thing with this is that I don't think we needed that much foreground, because we really want to concentrate on the sky. Then if I look at your sky, it pretty much is just stacked clouds. And the values are not really going far enough back as I'd like to see them. But as we get further back here, these values should get lighter and lighter.
You mean pushing the clouds back into the distance?
Yeah, a little aerial perspective. As things get further away from you, they get smaller and they get lighter. No, it's smaller is perspective, and then aerial perspective is that they get lighter. So I would like to have seen them get lighter. The mountains back there, I would like to have seen lighter too. So the values are really pretty intense. I'm not getting a sense of feeling. If you lighten up the background and lighten up the middle ground, the mountains, and got a little bit more blue in them, the sky would appear bigger. The problem, what I'm looking for in a painting is a central focal point. And if you just have sky, where's that central focal point? And then what I want to see is eye magnets about how do you get the viewer around the sky to and the sky offers a lot of opportunities to do that. So like in a sky like this, you could have a hailstorm in one section. You could have open sky in the other. But when you put in this much claustrophobia, so much of the same thing over and over and over again, filling the space, you lose sight of the overall painting. You're kind of so focused on painting clouds that you forgot that I'm not asking you to paint clouds. I'm actually asking you to paint an interesting painting with good eye magnets, central focal point. That's always the key that I'm looking for. Yeah. And so when I'm looking at just that, I don't see any movement. I don't see any contrasts. I don't see any spot that's brighter. Always have to remember that that's more important than anything else. Does that make sense?
That was the hardest part for me, doing what you just said. Look we got lucky 2 days after the assignment, we had clouds all over the place. Just unbelievable. And so I was going, wow. and I then said to myself, well, where's the focal point?
Yeah. And we're actually doing a still life, but we're looking up in the sky.
Do I create it, or do I pick it out of the sky was the question. And I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. Well, ultimately you have to create it. Ultimately you'll have to pick and choose and do whatever.
It doesn't appear.
Yeah. And the thing that part of the exercise is that we have a little bit of a foreground, and how do you connect that to your sky? If you don't want to have the painting look like it's cut up into two separate spheres, how do you work that out? And when you're doing a full landscape, even like when you're doing plein air painting, the sky is moving constantly, so it's constantly giving you ideas what to do, and you almost have to pick and choose things that are working. But ultimately, remember, you got to get the viewer around with eye magnets into that painting. It can't be just separate. And then out of there, you want a central focal point, something. If the homework assignment is sky or clouds, you want to have a central focal point in there that everything's working. So one cloud, one effect, something that's bigger and grander than just the rest of it, and the rest of it is the supporting cast. Okay, so I think also this orange color is so bright in here that it doesn't give me a sense of depth either. Were you working from a photograph? And did you pretty much just copy the photograph, or did you? Yeah, you got to kind of remember that photography is a poor source for great art.
You cannot get that right.
We have a tendency to look at a photograph and think we want to render it. But you've got to always remember that you're creating a work of art. You may see something that you like, but you've got to use the tools that you know to alter everything. because it might be physically there, but it might not be the best thing for a painting. And here we have a lot of horizontal lines, a lot of areas that capture our interest, but we don't get a full-on effect that makes us go, wow, I want that sky painting. If anything, it's just a little distracting, all of that lights and dark patterns. Okay? But you swung, you know. Barry Bonds swung at a lot of balls, a lot of strikes, and a lot of home runs. Whose is this?
Cool. That looks good.
Yeah, you know what works for me here is I do like the sky. I do like the thicker paint. But you have a lot of foreground here again too. You know, I was just wanting a sense of place. It's almost like I wish this were further down and just like this little hillside in here.
With that part of the assignment was if you're going to use eye magnets and you have such a limited amount of foreground, that's a tough thing to put together.
Mm-hmm.
So as I painted it, the foreground got higher and higher.
Yeah, you're bringing the eye magnets together. But you know, I think, you know, part of it was do a big sky painting. And so when you're looking at the whole valley, and when you're doing that kind of view, you do have areas that you can have rain that comes through that brings that together. If it's further back, it allows you to have more opportunities to create some interesting sky effects. Here again too, I would like to have seen more of this and how you would have handled maybe open air and just have the clouds in one section, the big billowing clouds. And that may have given us more space and more air. You just kind of got really, really too close to it. And maybe it should have been a horizontal painting instead of a vertical painting. It's really hard to capture a really big sky in a narrow spot. This painting feels like a foreground painting with an interesting sky. But even then we have this blue that's cuts the line through the middle of the painting. I don't think it really integrates very well. One thing about skies, another thing that you see artists do, and at the Oakland Museum, it's a perfect example of one. There's a large painting there, and it has horses coming up over a knoll, whole, 40 horses coming up over a knoll, and the horses are forming a certain abstract shape. And then the artist had actually reproduced that abstract shape in the clouds. And you can't tell that he does until you point it out and you can actually see that. But repeating patterns kind of help pull the two parts of the painting together too. I almost feel like you're kind of, if the clouds had a little more of this action going through, that it probably would have been a more successful painting. As it is, I kind of like what you have here, but again, in this, I don't have a central focal point. I would like to have seen these grayed down and one a little bit more bright. Also, you have a lot of brush strokes in there, and there's something to say about taking a palette knife and knocking down some of those brush strokes in the area that you want the most light, and so it becomes more luminous. Some little softer edges, and I would like to have seen maybe, even if we would have stacked the clouds further back and put it in, that would have helped pull the foreground in with it so that it kind of came out from behind it. But as it is, you almost have a sky and trees. So, close but no cigar.
I don't smoke.
Whose is this?
It's mine.
This one has my attention. There's a lot of movement in this. And the fact that the clouds are coming up over, you've integrated your foreground nicely into your sky. We're almost like looking over the trees to see the skyscape. I would like to have seen just at the bottom where this tree ends, just a little hint of grass, meadow or something like that, because I don't like things coming into the painting from the bottom. And the distance, the energy that you have in here and the overall effect that you've got in there is very effective. And then when I'm talking about a central focal point, it's there. It's like, boom, yeah. So this one was much more successful. This in a show would have me walk by and stop, because I think you really nailed that feeling well. So, good job.
Yeah, that was fun.
Boy, you could sell this by the pound. My God, that board is... Whose is this?
That's mine. Oh. And I saw a picture and I thought they were roosters in there, and now I can't see the roosters. That's why I painted, because I thought I saw some roosters.
See, there you go again with...
Drugs when you paint. No.
Yeah, see, when you drink and paint, don't drink and paint.
Good one.
But there again too, it's like, abstract, it's to tell the brain not to think is unreasonable. Because, unless you're talking about stupid people, we're not stupid because we've survived this far. So, abstract artists like to think you're stupid because then they can pretty much tell you anything and you'll buy into it. So if they don't make sense. But like you said, you saw clouds and you saw roosters. I do like the big billowing cloud. You did create a nice, interesting shape. And with color, we can kind of relate to you and the overall thing. If you notice, the foreground is really cool because it really is integrated into the cloud. So I'm not feeling like it's a cutout and added to there. So I like the way that you started this. I wish that out of all of this here, you would have had some place that was more important than all of this. And there are a few things that you need to watch out when you're doing something like this, is that if you have something this large, if we're standing in front of clouds this big, we couldn't see it all. We would have to look at part and part and part. And I wish as an artist you would choose a part that you want the viewer to look at. And so let's say you want the viewer to look at this, okay? That's where you would have these hard edges and things work. That's where you would have your brightest brights. When we saw with Don's painting, he really took everything and then kind of pushed all the highlights in one spot. Very, very effective. But you have the same highlight running all the way through on the top, which causes the brain to outline the edges. So I would like to have seen this brighter, this subdued more. And in the area of the focal point, you want the strongest lines, the sharpest lines. And so right in here, you would have sharp lines. But going around here, I would like to have them softened. So softer edges all in here. And then you notice the contrast. Contrasting colors, dark and light next to each other, really catch the eye. And so if you don't want the viewer up here, you might want to really dull these colors down or even lighten the background, because that really dark against the white really pulls us up here. You do have enough interest that pulls us back down, but with these hard edges in here, we get kind of stopped. And I think the painting would flow a little bit better. I think the only thing that's missing in this painting is probably another hour of softening your edges, bringing a central focal point. It's dynamic, and instead of trying to paint chickens, maybe, paint horses or something. I mean, come up with other shapes in there. But I think all in all, I think it's a great start, but it needs a little more work. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. But good. Why did you paint it on masonite?
Because I have that masonite.
You chose to paint on masonite. Very good. Did you put primer on it?
Not on that one. I didn't put it. Oh, no, I didn't put anything on it.
You just painted on the raw masonite? Not a good thing, because you do need a surface between your paint and your masonite.
Because?
Chipboard. Because first it absorbs, but the chemicals of the chipboard also alter the paint. The chipboard is not really archival.
On that other one, and I got some lines and in the wrong direction. And so I said,
That's why I like the Rust-Oleum spray paint, because you just get a nice flat surface. I've had more students thank me for showing them the Rust-Oleum on top of masonite.
Sorry, what are you talking about now?
spray paint white.
if you get masonite boards or chipboards that and then go down the hardware store and get the Rust-Oleum spray, just give it a few coats of the Rust-Oleum spray. You get a beautiful flat surface, and it's very archival, and the paint loves to stick on it. It's really a fantastic. It's better than gesso or anything else, and it dries fast. So you could prime your boards in an hour. You're ready to paint on
This
them.
was very fast drying, and it felt really good painting on it. I didn't, what's wrong with
Well, then-
gesso on it?
Well, will it last?
I just hate gesso.
Last or what?
No, well, first thing, gesso has now been proven. It's basically gesso that we buy is latex paint, and so old gesso is rubber skin glue with marble dust and white pigment. Okay, that's old gesso. New gesso is latex paint, white. Okay, that has been proven now not to be a really great surface for oil paint to go on. And they're finding now that paintings that were done in the 40s and 50s when acrylic paints were starting to hit the thing, that they're not as archival as they claim to be. So they're finding that acrylics aren't, I don't see why anybody paints with them. But the Rust-Oleum that you buy at the hardware store in a spray is actually manufactured to put on metals and cars and things. It's an auto primer. It has been designed to last forever, driving around in your car. Yeah, and then you paint on top of that. You're going to get a really solid oil base. And when you have oil on top of oil, the binding is stronger than if you have oil on top of acrylic. And so I think it's a waste of time to buy. I hate gesso anyway. And then ultimately you always have to sand the gesso, get the brush strokes out.
Well, I mean, for her to salvage that now, what would you suggest?
She should just paint. If she likes it, just paint on it.
Okay, so
But I mean, what happens to this? Is it going to fall off? The paint's going to fall off?
No. It may change the color a little bit, but you know the thing is, I think as far as the whole archival thing, you have to have a really big ego if you think, oh, my paintings have got to last forever. It's like if you like painting on that, then let the restorers, if you become like the next Van Gogh, let the restorers 100 years from now figure out how to save your paintings. You know, right now, if you like painting on it, then paint on it. All of your paintings are lacking. I mean, when we look at your big paintings in the studio, dark greens, dark reds, dark browns, and then I get you to go home and you're painting pastel, 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 pastel. The world isn't pastel unless you have cataracts, you know?
I don't know that.
Yeah, but I mean, chalky paintings just, you're not going to have anybody walk up to them and go, oh, beautiful. You got to get some balls in your painting, okay? There is no, because if without having good shadow, you're not going to get good highlights. And I love your brush strokes, but your colors are getting kind of weak. And for a Lucy painting, the last thing I would ever expect you to do is weak color. You're kind of a vivacious, kind of crazy woman.
Yes, exactly. Oh, but that's only just to play, and I can.
Quit playing. You don't have time to a play.
Okay, yeah, that's.
Your time is limited. You have to create great art.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And look, you have this. She's got this beautiful canvas that she's working on. I mean, you know,
I know that's a very.
it's a very expensive canvas. For God's sakes, you need to paint on it. You need to do really some great work. But there's just not enough meat on that bone.